What are they at risk of? What, murder, violence, drug abuse, sex trafficking? They're at risk of all these things. Then they come show up in your program, in my classroom or whatever. We got to understand that most of the stuff that we're dealing with, or most of the negative behaviors, has nothing to do with us. I want to emphasize that doing this work, working with disengaged communities, gang and drug impacted communities, is not as pretty as it looks on TV. I've said it before, it's not as pretty as it looks in the movies. So I encourage you, if you're going to work with these communities, make sure that you get familiar with the cultural norms and things of that nature of the community. We talk a lot about trauma-informed approaches, but it's very important that we understand trauma-informed approaches so that we don't re-traumatize the students that we're working with. I know people who work with gang and drug impacted populations, but they can't get past the profanity that the young people are using. Like as soon as a young man or young lady uses profanity, they can't get past it. Now, I'm not saying don't hold them accountable. I'm not saying don't create boundaries, but there's a way to do it. Calling their PO, you know what I'm saying, because they use profanity in your class is not the way to do it, right? Being so punitive to a community that's already being punished for almost everything that they do, right? So that's one thing. Like, let me give you an example about knowing your audience, knowing who you work with. My background's working with incarcerated youth. And I remember one time I had some food sitting out. It was like on a little table or something. Now, mind you, I work with these young men. We have a trust system and things of that nature. Now, I'm not naive. Just because we have a trust system doesn't mean that I can't get got. So I'm not going to sit anything out that I can't afford to lose, right? I'm not going to sit my car keys or nothing else. But I had some food out. And for the most part, we do have an honor system where I'm not going to disrespect you, you're not going to disrespect me. And I kind of do that on purpose because I am gradually teaching some of these young men who haven't been taught that we respect each other's boundaries, and there still is an honor system. The food is set out, and I don't announce that it's mine, right? But the food is set out, and long story short, somebody steals it. Now I'm upset. I'm highly upset. I'm not upset where I'm not about to call a PO or, going to court for it. But I'm upset because I'm like, look, we have an understanding. You don't touch my stuff. I'm not going to do you dirty. Don't do me dirty. So I end up having this long lecture with these young men about, we said we're going to look out for one another. We're going to respect one another's boundaries and things of that nature. That happens. Most of the young men are like, Mr. Vallatine, I did not do it. I didn't do it. Going through all of that. Anyway, long story short, as the day progresses, a young man, heavily gang impacted, if you use your imagination, he's with all the activity. He comes to me and says, Mr. Vallatine, I took the food, but I didn't know it was yours. I thought it was somebody else's. Now, so let's stop right there. That don't make it better. You know what I'm saying? The fact, he was like, I stole it, but I didn't know I was stealing from you. One thing I want to highlight about that is that just shows the power of relationship. That he was like, yeah, I will steal this food, but I wouldn't steal from you because of our relationship. Then he hands me a letter. I said, okay, and I look at the letter. I said, okay, I'm gonna read this. First of all, I respect that you was even honest and all of that. Now, in this letter, it's a lot of profanity in this letter. And he's talking about things like, Mr. Vallatine, I apologize, I respect you, and all these type of things. He says, I understand if, after you read this, we got to go to the back and catch a fade. You know what I mean? I understand, I'm willing to take the A whooping that you're going to give me, all these type of things. Understanding who I'm working with, understanding the cultural norms, being trauma informed, I recognize that he was being very respectful, very sentimental, and very apologetic. Somebody outside of the culture, or somebody that's not trauma informed, would read and hear him talking about fighting. He was talking about us engaging in the fight. He wasn't saying it in a way of being violent towards me. He was saying, basically, I'm willing to accept my discipline because that's the cultural norm that he comes from. And I give that example to say we have to take ourselves out of it. Sometimes we make all this stuff about us, right? I ask people all the time when I'm doing trainings, let's unpack this concept of at-risk youth. A lot of times we use the term at-risk youth, at-risk youth, at-risk youth. What are they at risk of? What, murder, violence, drug abuse, sex trafficking, incarceration? I mean, we could go on and on and on. They're at risk of all these things. Then they come show up in your program, in my classroom or whatever, and they may not have the most positive attitude. And I can't get past the fact that they didn't say good morning. or that they didn't say please, or they didn't, have a smile on their face. It's not about me. You know what I mean? We got to understand that most of the stuff that we're dealing with, or most of the negative behaviors, has nothing to do with us. And if we're going to be practitioners in these communities' lives, we have to take ourselves out of it and really have some empathy and some compassion for the people that we're working with, and understand trust takes time. Again, not saying that it's okay that he should steal from anybody, but I'm not the moral judge of all of that. But all I can do is create relationships where he can start to respect certain boundaries, and from there it can grow. So I want us to be very intentional about being trauma informed. If you're not already trauma informed, get you some training. By the way, I got that for you if you need it. But get you some training to really understand the communities you serve, to understand the social norms, because sometimes we misinterpret things that may be respect. We may take it as disrespect. It's not the student's responsibility to understand you. It's your responsibility to understand the student. And I'm talking whether it be minors, whether it be adults or whoever. If you're working with reentry populations, if you're working with, homeless population, whoever, understand the culture, or else it's going to lead to a lot of misinformed approaches to how to deal with them, which can lead to further re-traumatization of that group. Okay. So with that being said, get you some education, get you some edumacation for a movement.